Hello, well, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tayte in the Hour, and today we are delving back into the realms of television. That's right, we are talking about the brand new BBC Sherlock season premiere with Sherlock Series 4, The Six Thatchers. This is obviously episode 1 out of 3. All the previous series have been 3 episodes long, and this is returned after quite a long absence from the TV now. Granted, last year for the Christmas special, I believe it was, or it might have been New Year again. I can't remember. We had The Abominable Bride, I believe it was called, which was the special they did. It was kind of a little odd mark episode in between season 3 and this one. And I'm sure we'll talk much more about that in terms of how this one follows on, or essentially kind of doesn't follow on from that episode in many ways. So it's been really 3 years since we've had a proper Sherlock series. And you can kind of feel that absence in there, I think, when this comes back, especially with some of the story threads it's linking back to. But I guess we can start off what we think on Sherlock. We've never done a review before. We've never really talked about it before on the channel. We've only sort of talked different TV shows here and there very sparingly. We've got more into that with our Netflix series this year. But Tayte, sort of brief overview on all the series we've had so far. What do you think of BBC Sherlock?
Series 1 had 2 very, very good episodes, which I really liked, and one which was The Blind Banker, which I did not like that much. Series 2 had 2 episodes that I really, really, really liked, and then one episode which just wasn't as good, and that was The Hounds of Baskerville.
Yeah.
Series 3 had
I'm gonna see
2 episodes that I really, really, really liked, and one that I didn't really like as much. And funnily enough, once again, it was the middle episode. So if we're picking up a pattern here, the middle episode of the series tends to be the weaker one.
Yeah.
From all 3 of the series. And I say that overall, it's a good series. Like, it's one of the best modern retellings of Sherlock we've seen. Let's just forget about Elementary. And like, they've got good writers behind it. They got good writers behind it. They got a brilliant cast. It's completely changed the face of Sherlock Holmes. And The Abominable Bride, when we go into it, I wasn't completely captivated by it. I liked the kind of Victorian era setting, and I liked kind of the pretense of the story and the mystery that surrounded it. However, it just felt like a completely detached episode. Completely detached. And I don't know whether that worked or not, because they don't really revisit anything into like this series. And not only that, but they don't like even acknowledge any of the events that took place. And it feels like nothing has actually changed in Sherlock because of that.
Yeah, no, I should also say this review is going to be completely spoiler-filled, by the way. We're basically just going to give our entire opinion on the episode. So the episode opens up now. As I say, like, I've only watched these. I own Series 1 and 2 on DVD. I've watched those episodes many, many times. Series 3 I didn't really care for, so I never bought it. I do need to go back to complete my collection. And I've only seen The Abominable Bride once. So if I'm remembering correctly, at the end of that, he realizes it's all a dream. He gets in his mind what Moriarty's next plan is. He knows where he's going to attack next. And it's kind of him on the hunt saying, I know what he's planning. Boom, we cut to credits. Teasing Series 4.
Hold on. And then this series starts by him saying, I kind of don't know what Moriarty's going to do next.
Exactly. And I mean, the special they did is integral because it sets up the concept that Moriarty is actually no, didn't Series 3 ended that way, didn't it? I believe
Series 3 ended that way with the mystery. Yeah.
And in this one, the opening scene of this episode, they kind of refer to the fact that he's a junkie as well, and he's clean, and he's kind of very hyperactive at the very beginning of the episode. And that was actually an element I really didn't like in the special, was the fact that they said, oh, Sherlock Holmes is a junkie, because we've had no setup for that before. I know
we have had some setup in the final episode of Series 3. He was basically in a crack den for the first part of the episode, gaining information.
Yeah, but I always saw that's all he was there for, just gaining information.
It's always been hinted that he's had addictions, and he's taken his addictions to different places, and every incarnation of Sherlock has had addictions to different things.
Yeah, but I've never, in this context, in this series, I've never seen that as drugs or heroin or cocaine or whatever it happens to be. I know in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novels, he does take cocaine to keep his mind active and hyperactive all the time. And if we go back to series one with Sherlock, they sort of hint at that. There's a shot where it almost looks like he's tying up and it's slow motion, he's lying back. And then we find out that it's nicotine patches and he's got a nicotine addiction. I thought that was a really neat spin they brought to the character, especially considering that Sherlock is a character that smokes a lot. So it was very weird to suddenly get to the special and they say, no, he's been a junkie for a long time. And they kind of reference that at the beginning of this. And I think they're kind of throwing that out the window. And that's, again, it feels... I'm guessing that episode was made just as an episode to be like, hey, guys, Sherlock's still around. We promise we're coming back with a series 4 once we've got everyone's schedules married up. It did feel very out of place, though, when we get to this one. So I guess we'll get into our review with this episode of series 4, The Six Thatchers, as just sort of a brief overview, and then we'll go into more detail. What did you think of this episode and the return of Sherlock as a whole?
Very mediocre.
You sound like a Morton Joe from Fury Road. Mediocre.
That the episode was possibly the worst episode of Sherlock to date, and it's difficult to talk about episodes like a TV show that has such high caliber episodes. I mean, the best reference or the best kind of thing that I can talk about in that sense was Game of Thrones. The episode with the sand snakes. I cannot remember the name of the episode in series 5. What's the my god, that is gonna haunt me that I don't know the name of that episode. But that episode wasn't that bad. However, in the context of the entire show, it was a subpar episode. When you've got the bar set here, if you do an episode down here, people are going to say that the episode is somewhere down here because they feel like they're almost cheated. They're expecting a very high caliber episode and you don't get something as high caliber. And with this episode, maybe the fact that it wasn't as good like as any of the previous episodes from the previous series, and I know why it didn't feel as good. I could very easily explain it when we go further into details with it, but it just didn't feel as good, like, at all.
No, and I'll kind of agree with that as well. There were moments which were brilliant, and I actually have to say, in terms of like visual style, this was probably one of the strongest episodes. Now, they still bring back those whole elements in they've had from series 1 with the whole mobile phone texting and the message comes up, and actually a lot of TV shows are borrowing that now. I think Sherlock really did bring that into the focus. But sort of how they're doing these, there's a great visual metaphor in this film of aquariums and sharks being ever present on the camera, and I like how they blended that. That was something new to the Sherlock series that I really enjoyed. However, in terms of... Go on, sorry.
On the other hand, it looked like they managed to get themselves a lot more kind of money into the budget and editing department, and they wanted to show it off, and it felt like it was a person who'd literally found PowerPoint transitions for the first time and just wanted to use all of them at once.
All of the crossfades.
Sadly, I didn't enjoy that part of the episode.
Oh, really?
They wanted to use every single transition, and I'm pretty sure that if I went back through the episode, I reckon that the transitions wouldn't repeat. I reckon it would just be a different transition per shot.
See, I love that about it. I love that, and I thought that said a lot about the character, not just the plot, and that ultimately it culminates in an aquarium, but just sort of you can apply it to so many things. You can.
I like the fact that they was referencing the aquarium throughout the episode, and it was just kind of had that kind of hint. But what I didn't like was the kind of way that they did it. I like the way they were kind of hinting it from the very, very start that something was going to happen in an aquarium, something was going to happen to like metaphor for sharks and stuff like that. But what I didn't like was the fact that they used like all of the different slideshow effects that they had on hand from Microsoft PowerPoint and just inserted them into the actual TV episode.
I didn't think they were that bad. I really didn't. I thought it was a nice visual style that we hadn't seen in Sherlock before. I really liked it, especially when like Sherlock would be walking down a street. I think there was a shot, and then it kind of crossfaded into a shark swimming. I thought that was fantastic. And what you can apply the metaphor of the shark to, it's like so many avenues in this episode. I mean, you can apply it to Moriarty, and that we know he's out there somewhere. He's very predatory in nature, and he's kind of coming in from the shadows very slowly, very stealthily. You can apply it to, you know, like Sherlock, like how a shark has to always constantly keep moving, and that's really how Sherlock applies himself to his work. He's always trying to do a case. You know, he's texting behind his back, possibly not so successfully, we find out in the episode. He's always trying to do that. And then you can apply it to ultimately how the episode ends, and, you know, what the characters have now got to do, and that, you know, they've got to keep moving forward. And we'll talk much more about the ending of the episode later on. I think, in my opinion, I'm going to have to give this episode a couple more watches and see how I compare it to previous episodes. But I'm kind of with you on initial viewing. I do find it very mediocre. However, I like the themes that it addresses. And I think in terms of setting up possible plot lines for future episodes, it's very interesting as where it could go. I think what lets this episode particularly down ultimately is its story. I thought the episode took a while to find its footing and really get to what it was trying to say. I found it very meandering. There are a lot of scenes at the beginning of the episode that felt very out of character, even for Sherlock, and it felt very tired and very, they were trying to go for comical, but it just didn't work for him. I think the comedy with Sherlock and even with Watson has been a lot stronger in previous episodes, so it felt a bit clunky. And I don't know if that's because we've had 3 years gap from the previous series, so I'm not used to it and I need to get back into it, but it's something felt off, even with the chemistry between Sherlock and Watson, that we've had in previous episodes. I'm not sure.
I have a lot of problems with this episode.
Yeah.
A lot of problems. The main problem is the story, and I feel like the impact of the story itself. The story was originally based off one of the original Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories called The Six Napoleons, I believe.
The Adventure of the Six Napoleons, yeah.
Yes. And I liked where it was going at the start with like the hunting down of the different like Thatchers, and then they keep on getting smashed, and there's a mystery behind like almost each one, and trying to figure out what's going on, why are these Thatchers being destroyed. And then as soon as they kind of reveal where the episode is going, because I think everyone was thinking, okay, it's got something to do with Moriarty, there's got to be something to do with the, like, we worked out as the public, okay, it's got to be that Black Pearl thing that he's searching after.
Yeah.
It's got to be linked to that Interpol thing. And I liked that it was different. However, the way they made it different just kind of, it didn't feel like it had any impact because they hadn't had enough screen time for Mary yet. Mary as a character was still this mysterious woman, like, and I was hoping that she would maintain mysterious throughout the entire series with more things being leaked out. And they basically just go and blow it all open immediately and say who she is, all of her secrets, like, and all this just in one scene, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, the actress is great. I'm going to try and find her name now. I did have it on IMDb a second ago. Amanda Abington, who I believe has been recently divorced from Martin Freeman. I know they were together. I think she's a great actress. I think she plays it brilliantly. And in that ending scene, I really believed it. And I thought she played that fantastically. However, the actual character of Mary Watson is just a character I just really dislike and just really don't care about. Like, I like it when it's Sherlock, when it's Watson, you've got Molly. And I know with Series 3 and with any series, you have the task of introducing new characters. And Series 3 really did try to do that. I just didn't really care for it, in all honesty.
The thing is, though, she could have been really well used. I mean, they kept on saying, oh, she's some super secret agent spy type person. And yet they never actually show her do anything like that.
Only in the flashback sequences with Agro in this episode. I think we get a little bit in Series 3. And I mean, this was my problem. I mean, I should have gone back and rewatched Season 3 before this one came out, because it did link to a lot of things from Series 3 that I couldn't quite remember. As I say, I've only seen Series 3 once, so that was the fault on my part. But I just didn't find it particularly interesting. And actually, as a Batman fan, I found the whole plot of AJ wanting revenge on Mary to be almost identical to the Red Hood storyline from Batman. How, you know, he's been taken away from his comrade in Batman. It's obviously
Yeah.
Robin and Batman. He is kidnapped. He is tortured for months on end. He's told that no one cares about him, that the person he once trusted has betrayed him, has gone against him, which changes his mindset. And then when he's released, he goes on a revenge rampage and wants to kill them. That's ultimately the character of Red Hood, Jason Todd from Batman. So I found that whole entire plot line just completely recycled. I knew exactly where it was going to go. And I just felt at this stage, it felt a little bit rushed, like you just said, like you wanted to see more of her story develop through this new series, especially what they'd set up in series 3. And it felt like, right, we've got to have a giving birth in this episode. We've got to show the relationship. We've got to show that Watson might be pushing more towards an affair. We've got to do all these things. We've got to show her past, and then we've got to kill her off. And it all seemed like this was a very Mary-centric episode.
There was more subplots in this episode than actual plot.
Yes, yeah.
And that never works. Like, the big thing with Sherlock is his one thing. He is a detective. And yet, like, the main case of the Six Thatchers, and, like, the first case was obviously, okay, who's destroying the Six Thatchers and everything like that. That was solved about 40 minutes in. So what do you have left? Okay, now he's trying to solve a case which basically Mary is trying to solve, not Sherlock.
Yeah.
And that takes away what Sherlock is. Sherlock is a detective show about Sherlock. It's not the freaking Mary Watson adventures, or the Mary and John have marriage difficulties, and oh, do you know what? We're going to kill her off at the end of the episode just to make John feel bad.
It really felt like they were clutching at straws storylines to keep her involved in the series.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like to me. I'll agree. Like, Sherlock in this episode to me felt very much like a supporting character in his own series, which was very strange. And I don't think we've really had that before.
It has worked in other series. It has. I mean, one of the best episodes of Doctor Who of all time is Blink, where he is in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, you can have a story set in the universe with the main character as a background character and still make it work. Because you need to have, like, you need to introduce strong characters. You need to have the secondary characters really pick it up and really kind of take a grasp of the story, and maybe have the other character, I don't know, in the background doing something, or at least kind of helping in some way, shape, or form. But this just felt like he was ghosting in the background doing nothing.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, I don't want to harp on this episode too much because there is still a lot of things that I did enjoy in this episode. I did feel that, I don't know if it was sort of like the relationship between the characters or whatnot, but something fell off to me. It didn't feel like they had the same bond as they'd have in previous series. But that goes with like Sherlock and Watson and just all the acting in general. It didn't feel like it quite had that spark to it, or that pace to it, or that really kinetic energy that the other ones had.
It felt like all of the actors had just finished like a 24 episode series with 1 hour per episode, and they're all a bit tired. They're getting towards the end, and they just kind of, they're getting on set. Okay, they're doing their part. They're smiling for the camera, and then as soon as they're off camera, they look miserable. It's just that the miserableness kind of seeped through a little. Just didn't feel. There was almost, it almost felt like they were coasting throughout the entire episode, the actors, and that's really not good for a TV show. There was some moments which were quite powerful and quite good. However, when you look at the actual ending, and yeah, Mary gets shot, Mary dies, she jumps in front of a bullet, don't know how she managed to...
It's the whole slow motion dive.
Like, that moment is completely killed by two things. One,
I know what one of these things are.
The John Chewbacca impersonation with his I know, deep down in my heart, I still love you. That was bad.
Yes, yeah. And I will say that I have now seen, he may have done more. I've now seen 2 Martin Freeman related deathbed scenes in TV and film. This is the second one. The first is obviously at the end of The Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies. And I will admit that I think that the one in The Hobbit is a little bit better, but there's still a moment when Thorin Oakenshield dies where Martin Freeman does something very similar. He kind of lets out this weep and he's like, and I was like, I am not buying that for a second, mate. Can we go for another take? Time out. Can we go for another take? And I kind of felt, I know what they were going for. They wanted that kind of exasperated, just, demonic, just rage he has. But in the moment, it was hilarious. And I don't think I'm ever going to not be able to watch that and not burst out laughing when he does it.
Okay, there's actually three things. Next thing is the fact that he's pissed off that his wife jumped in front of a bullet.
Right? I said that. I said it. He was like, you were supposed to save her. You took a vow. I'm like, well it was her decision.
he was willing to take that bullet. He was obviously coaxing her into shooting.
Yeah.
Of some sort. Maybe there's a little bit of suicidal kind of instance there. But just, I don't know. Like, he got really angry at Sherlock, even though it was his wife's decision to jump in front of the bullet. That's
going to be really tense the morning after in 221B Baker Street, because Sherlock will be like, I thought we were bros, man. Like, why did you were in the army? Like, why didn't you jump in front of the bullet for me? Like, why did it have to be her? It'd be like, I've been minding the baby all day. I've lack of sleep. I'm tired. I'm lethargic.
Here's what I was expecting. I was expecting a slow roll of music. You can kind of hear it very slowly in the background. And you then see the person pull the bullet, like the gun, and shoot. And then you see Mark Gatiss start to wade his way through the crowd and jump towards. And then I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston starts blasting out loud as he jumps in front of the bullet going, no! As the chorus really kicks up. And in slow motion, he's diving in front of the bullet. And then the bullet misses Mark Gatiss and hits Sherlock anyway.
No, you just know that Facebook's going to do that with My Heart Will Go On, with Celine Dion from Titanic. Like, that's going to be the next one they do. No, I thought exactly. And actually, when the gun was fired and it did the whole slow-mo shot and Sherlock was kind of like that, I thought, I don't care, Mark Gatiss and co. How superhuman you try to make Sherlock. You're not going to tell me he's going to do the whole Matrix slow-mo backbreaker and he's going to dodge all the bullets. I'm like, or he's going to Robert Downey Jr. discombobulate.
No, here's what he's doing. He completely recreates the scene from Watchmen with Ozymandias, and he literally dodges the bullet, grabs like this weird ball out of nowhere, and just does like a 360 spin and slams her just across the side into the water.
Oh, and then smash it into a fish tank, and all the water comes pouring out. God, I would have loved that.
You know what? That's very dangerous of her. She shot a gun in a room which is basically filled with glass holding back water.
And water-containing sharks, no less. I would have loved to have seen her get like a Bond villain death and just get like savaged by a shark in this. Anyway, you said you had a third problem you had with this.
Third point was that the entire sad scene of Mary dying, which was not really that sad, if I'm going to be perfectly honest.
I thought she did play very well, though.
The impact was made completely mute by the fact that the entire scene wasn't set up as a goodbye farewell to the character, but instead a video where she was saying, yo, can you be like a bro to my ex-husband? Because, I'm dead now. So can you just pop in, make him a cup of tea, check that he's okay.
Save him. I'd have loved the payoff to the whole balloon sequence. And he sits down with like a cup of tea, like, here you go, John. I'm sorry for the death of your wife. And he's just talking to the balloon. Like, he still hasn't made that connection that Watson isn't there. That would have been great. And then you get like a really bizarre post-credit scene where she says, go to hell, Sherlock. Like, I don't know if that's a theme that's going to come back in it, or if that was just like a little jibe she was having it, like a little comedic jibe. I'm not sure. That was very strange.
I did not see that.
Yeah, it like just like a whole like static cut after the credits finish, and then she just says, go to hell, Sherlock. And then it cuts off. So I don't know. Next week's looks cool. Next week's episode looks really cool. You've got Toby Jones being creepy as shit as like this weird...
Yeah.
Pygmalion doctor guy. That's going to be really cool. I'm trying to think what else. One thing I really, really did like. I love how, as these series have progressed, they always introduce an episode where you see a little bit more of the human side to Sherlock. It's always something he's been resisting. My favourite, because I'm a hopeless romantic at heart, I always love the stuff between him and Molly. Like, I'm always screaming at the TV, like, get together. But then part of me, because I love the character of Sherlock Holmes so much, he's one of my favourite fictional characters. You know they can't be together.
My favourite scene in Sherlock throughout the entire series,
let's see
not the
same
big bombastic finales, it is the moment where he goes to Molly and asks for her help.
Oh, see, I have a different one. But I do like that scene, though. My one's from the where he does the best man speech in series 3, and he sees his best friend with his new wife. He's kind of looking around, and no one's there, and he just gets his coat on and he just leaves the party. That's my favourite bit with Sherlock. But no, I love when they introduce those more human scenes to him, and I thought it was fantastic how they set it up, because I think if we go back to series 1 with Watson, that began with him in a therapy session. I'm not sure if it was the same actress who was a therapist or not. And it was him reliving his PTSD of being in the Afghan war. And we see that same therapy session again. And when the camera pans round and it's the reveal that Sherlock's there, and like, he's never been one for therapy at all. But the fact that he's like, I don't know how to handle this situation. This is a very strange situation for me to be in. What do I do to try and save my friend? How do I go about it? I thought that was a very human, a very believable thing that he would do in that moment. Like, he would turn to that. I really liked that about it. And as I said, I liked the whole... I did think this was a not so subtle theme they were trying to bring into the story, with the whole like fable, the whole story of the guy who was trying to evade death. And he went to one city after seeing death and thought he'd be safe, but then death kept following him everywhere. The fact that Sherlock's always been trying to outrun it, and the fact that, you know, because he lives such a dangerous lifestyle, even with Mary, I guess it ties more in with Mary, but also the repercussions of that are going to tie in with Sherlock's future in the series as well, with Moriarty.
In hindsight, that was a good nod at the start of the episode, and you could have, if you like, thinking back now, you could have gone, okay, out of all of the characters in Sherlock, who is chasing death the most? Who has the most, like, the biggest past that could catch up to them? And that would have been Mary.
And she even says, I can't remember the line of dialogue, but she says that there is no... I think that Mycroft might say, he says, people don't reach retirement age in that line of work. They tend to get retired. And I mean, she knew it herself. I mean, she kind of welcomed it, but the fact that she does kind of go out a hero was a great moment. We talked about the acting and how that scene kind of set up. But this is what I mean, that I thought the episode was very mediocre, but I like some of the themes that it was dealing with and the possible setups for future episodes. We also haven't talked about the very mysterious woman that Watson meets on the bus and who he gets the number off with. E, I think was her name, with 2 kisses. The fact that she is texting at very appropriate times when she knows that he's alone or secluded. That's going to get some payoff down the line. I know it is, because that's very intriguing, especially how it brings it up again towards the end. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing where they take the character of Sherlock, especially considering the last episode's called The Final Problem. That's going to be very interesting. Go on, sorry.
The synopsis for the final episode, I believe, is them being chased by Moriarty around Europe.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether that is Moriarty actually chasing them or whether it is Moriarty's associates. Now, at the start of series 3, Sherlock says that it took him 2 whole years to completely dismantle Moriarty's web. So obviously Moriarty's web is still alive. Maybe we don't know how deep it goes yet.
Yeah, and I mean, this... I don't think it will be, but this series has been touted as possibly the last Sherlock series because of how difficult it is to get Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch's schedules to line up, especially now that Benedict Cumberbatch is involved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Doctor Strange, and he's going to be in Thor Ragnarok as well.
And Martin Freeman's involved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
As a bit, but he still is. In terms of other things I liked about the episode, really quickly, I loved the line where I think Mary calls Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock the Dragon Slayer, and I just shouted at the screen, he's not a Dragon Slayer, he is the dragon. He is Smaug the Magnificent from the Hobbit series. And the fact that Toby was introduced, the dog. Now, I thought it was a character just made for the Disney movie Basil the Great Mouse Detective. Toby's in that. He's a hound, a basset hound, who follows the character of Basil around in that and helps him on the adventure and is like the sniffer dog. And I didn't realise that it is actually a dog that features in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle novels as well. I believe in the original books, it was a Spaniel and Lurcher cross, and then it was Basil the Great Mouse Detective that made it a basset hound. So they've clearly gone with that species of dog again. So I thought that was a neat tie-in to a very minor character in the books, as well as that Disney movie, which is one of my favourite Disney movies as well. I thought that was a cool little nod as well.
That's a light note. I'm going to go with a slightly more boring and note, which will make you think, oh, God, this episode really wasn't that good. Most of the Sherlock episodes, there is some slight element of, I'd say, randomness or coincidence.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it is Sherlock actually solving things and just kind of stumbling across things and going, okay, I solved it, but I wasn't expecting that to happen. In this, he basically is chasing after the guy who is the Six Thatchers, who coincidentally is linked to a past about Mary, who he coincidentally knows as literally one of the only people who knows about Mary's past, one of 3 people who knows about Mary's past. So this guy, AJ, has met 1 out of 3 possible people out of however many like million people he could have met finding these 6 Thatchers.
Mm.
And it just so happened to be the last Thatcher that had the memory stick. And it just so happened to be the one which Sherlock staked out. That's way too much coincidence for an episode of Sherlock. That's way more than normal.
Yeah.
And off that basis, like, you expected him to follow up with something maybe slightly clever, and I know they use it as a joke, but him putting a tracker on the USB stick, when did he get the chance to do that? Because didn't he get knocked out like before he could do anything to it?
He clearly had done it before then, like he knew that she would take it. But the thing is, considering she's like a special agent, like probably like a peg of like the SAS in terms of like secret ops that she's been on, wouldn't she check to see if it had a tracker on it first? Like that would be the first thing you'd do in that situation. I know she'd have the means to do it. I could have done without that whole montage of her changing identities and traversing all over the world, because ultimately it leads them to the same thing. Like they're having that confrontation. She escapes. We get like this 5-minute montage or more of her going across the world to conceal her identity. She gets there and Sherlock's there, and Watson shows up,
and
AJ shows up. I'm like, why couldn't you have just done this in London?
Finally, not only does AJ get shot, but it's almost as if like, oh, he got shot, and then the scene ends.
Yeah, and especially considering she says like we were like family, like we all looked out for each other. This team of like 4 of us. That was, it kind of felt like, oh, we've got that plot point out of the way now. Now we're on to the main one. I will agree with that. So the more I'm talking about this episode, the more we're kind of picking it apart, the less I'm enjoying it. But as I said, I still think that as TV goes, it still leaps and bounds above the rest in terms of like what we get on conventional TV. It has made me interested to see the next 2 episodes that we got, and we'll also have reviews on those as well. And I like the themes it was trying to say. That being said, I think the themes greatly surpass the actual story that contained them. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about this. I would say as well that I do like when they throw little red herrings in there as well. So the whole Black Pearl thing, and every time they kept mentioning that, I kept thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean, which I guess is unavoidable. Initially, I did think that it was going to be the Interpol lady who was behind it all, because she was the one who was adamant that she really wanted Sherlock Holmes to find this Black Pearl, and I thought he was going to find the memory stick and it was going to be tied to her. That's clearly the reason they had her in the episode, but I thought that was a good bit of misdirection. Great performances for the most part. As I said, I think that some of the dynamic is off. I'm hoping they kind of rectify that when they get to the next 2 episodes.
I've just thought for a second.
Yeah.
Why did he want the memory stick?
Who?
I can understand that he wanted it for his alias, like AJ.
Who, AJ?
Yeah, and then he wanted to kill Mary for her memory stick.
I think because what she said is that they all had like dirt on each other because they all had each other's memory sticks, and I think he would have sort of exposed her past to everyone, so she would have been a walking target, or it would basically have spelled the end for her normal life. I guess that's what I interpret. I don't know if that was the case. But yeah, that's really all I can say. As I say, I like the visuals in it, the new style they brought with that. I thought that Mark Gatiss was brilliant, as always, as Mycroft. He always is. He's one of my favourite characters, and I love his dynamic with his brother Sherlock in it. I thought it was okay. I'd give it a very average rating. I hate numeric scores, but if I was going to give it something out of 10, I would probably give it about like a 6.8 or a 7, like a very sort of high-end average score.
I give it 6.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I think that it's going to take a while for it to find its footing. It might be one of those episodes that once we see where all the plot threads go, if they do follow up on all of them and the fallout of this episode, as well as the mysteries it's set up, then it might be one I go back to and enjoy a lot more.
I hope so, because this episode basically had no entrance episode, so it's basically starting again. So if it doesn't have anything to continue properly onto the next episode with a mystery, then it feels pretty much pointless.
Well, when it showed you like next week on Sherlock, at the end of this episode, they set up the fact that Watson is completely against Sherlock now. There's that divide between them now. There's that great scene where he goes to Molly and she says like, yeah, he doesn't want to see you. But then you get the clip for next week's episodes and they're back together solving another case. So I don't know if it's going to be some tension still between them. I expect it would be. But if there is still that tension, he should totally say what you said, Tayte, about the fact, well, your wife willingly jumped in front of a moving bullet and took that bullet. That was all on her own accord. That was on her. Her death's on herself. So that's basically all I can say about the episode. Do you have any final thoughts? And then we'll close out.
Not really. No.
Okay. I guess that'll do it for our review on Sherlock Series 4, the Six Thatchers. Be sure to come back next week for our review on the next episode, which I need to find a title for, actually, which is called The Lying Detective. So we'll be back next week with a review on that. Be sure to comment, subscribe, let us know what you thought of the episode. Did you like it a lot more than we did, or did you also think it was average or negative? Whatever you like, please do drop us a comment. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, there'll be more movie reviews, more reactions from me. I'm about to get on a movie review right now, in fact, for A Monster Calls. So have a look for that in the next couple of days. And until next time, we'll see you guys next time. See ya.